Hey, and welcome to Discard. Today we have the DiskCast. This is a new podcast that I'm trying out here on the second channel. I'm here with Shae. Shae's an awesome dude.
Hello. I am told I am an awesome dude. How is everybody doing today?
It's true. Shae's a fantastic guy. Loves talking about video games, and I found it's very interesting to have back and forths with him about different things. We're going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about what's going on in gaming, what we're playing, cool pickups we got, some questions we got from the Discord as well, and we're going to dig into it.
We've been doing podcasts for exactly 4 minutes on the Discard second channel, and I am so privileged to be a part of this. For how long? Who knows? But thanks for having me on, man. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So for now, Shae is like a permanent fixture of this, and then we're looking to get more people in the future once we get our hands around this situation.
It won't last. I mean, once you get professionals in the door, it's all over for me. But that's okay. I'm happy to be on board in the beginning. I was in the first Smashified video when they leaked Rayman for Smash. I was totally in the video where he showed how he did it. So go check that out.
We'll shoot for non-professionals then. We got to keep you around. So we'll just find some people who don't even play games. I think that's probably
all
the
right.
way to go.
Sounds good. So like me, basically, I just buy them and then they go up on the shelf and then they just sit there.
So the first thing today we're going to talk about is what are you playing right now? Like, what is the thing on the table? What's in the cartridge in the thing? Is it retro? Is it modern? Is it like mind-blowing? Is it terrible? So what are you playing right now, Shae?
You're asking me what I'm playing right now. Well, I just finished Batman Arkham Asylum. And when I say just finished, I mean, yes, it's 13 years later. Yes, I just finished it this morning. I got the Platinum Trophy and everything. I was finishing up hard mode because I didn't realize that you could stack those particular trophies. So I went back and I finished the game on hard mode. But those challenges, man, that's where the challenge really is. Hard mode is nothing compared to those stupid challenges.
Really? Interesting.
They absolutely destroyed me.
I never tried hard mode, but I remember the challenges being insane. Like when you got to the end of that game, there was like so much still you could do, and I remember like running through different battle challenges and that kind of thing. And they were tough, but we loved that game. Is this the first time you played it, or is this like your second try, or have you tried it in the past?
No, this is the first time ever. So back in so I grew up. In the background about me, I was born in the 90s, right? So I grew up, during the early 2000s. Like that is my nostalgia period, is for the early 2000s, and especially for actually the late 2000s, which is when I was in high school. I didn't have any money. I didn't grow up rich or anything. I didn't even have any consoles other than the Wii at that point. So when I got to college, I got a 360. That was like one of my first big adult purchases. And I there were a bunch of games in 2011, 2012 that I was able to pick up and play for the first time, but I never really went back, and I never went back to like 2009, 10. So I missed Asylum, I missed City. Plus, I'm not like a big superhero guy, so I just don't tend to gravitate towards those sorts of games, and it just kind of fell by the wayside until someone told me that Asylum is basically kind of like a Metroid game with the backtracking and the item progression and all that stuff. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot. And that game is unbelievable. It's so good. It holds up so well.
It really does. And it's like also like it's so it's kind of very important to gaming because it comes up so often when we talk about certain games like Spider-Man, for instance. Like when Spider-Man, you draw immediate comparison from Spider-Man to that. And it's used like all the time. Kind of like, like Breath of the Wild is now when we talk about open world games. It's like one of those staples that always comes up. But I love that journey though, man.
Up to Arkham Asylum, like there really weren't good superhero games. Like you get your odd, occasionally the games are you get like an okay one. Like you get Spider-Man 2 on PS2 but like for the most part, that was really the beginning of good superhero games. Because until then, you had like Fantastic Four, Aquaman, the crappy X-Men GameCube games. The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction was pretty good, as I understand it. That was, I think, Beanox. That was like an Activision game. But apart from that, I mean, you really just didn't get a lot. But Arkham Asylum, just to get back to the main point, absolute joy. Even still, 13 years later, if you haven't played it, that's appointment gaming.
Yeah, I mean, like it's been a long time since I played it, but I seem to remember it's kind of that beat 'em up style in a way where like you get into a fight, it like automatically brings you towards enemies so you can fight them, and then you have like some quick time things, or like you have to push a button sometimes? Is that a like
I mean,
to do a
you're
certain attack, like
simplifying
a
it.
back attack, like stuff like that,
You
Um,
definitely are simplifying it a little bit, but the combo system, yes, it does pull you towards the enemies. So like you just point in the direction that you want Batman to go when you start your combo. So you got your simple punch move, enemies will run up behind you, and you got your counter move. So that's 2 different button presses. As the game progresses, you start getting more difficult enemies that you need to do different types of counters for. And that's when it like really starts getting nuts and messing with your mind. Like you start planning out your attack multiple moves in advance before you start comboing, because to get some of the trophies and to progress through the game at all, you have to get really good at this combo thing.
For sure.
There's a trophy for a 40 combo, and I pulled off a 40 multiple times.
That's actually crazy. The game, I mean, I remember it being just so much fun to go through. Like you start out in the beginning, it just feels so good, man. Like you can kind of mash your way through like some of the beginning stuff. And then, like you said, that progression of like they give you a little piece at a time where an enemy's like, oh, you got to like slide under this guy, or you got to get behind this guy. There's different types of enemies to kind of like push you a little bit further. And then, like the challenges sound absolutely crazy, like where you were doing mega combos.
And don't make the mistake of thinking that you can just button mash through this game, because as you're watching it, like you probably think, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just, press this button here, this button there, just, whatever, and it'll be okay. And if you're playing on normal, that'll work for a while. But once they start introducing those other enemies where you have to do the other combo types, if you weren't paying attention up to that point, you were in trouble. It's going to be too hard for you to get through at that point. So you really got to commit to this combo system, and it's worth it. I mean, you get out what you put in.
It's funny because like you could literally cut up our conversation and just insert Spider-Man there, and it's like exactly it's exactly the same thing. That kind of like rock steady progression where you just kind of build up these combos, and like it gets like if you were to take yourself at the beginning of the game and put yourself at the beginning of the game or at the end of the game like right away, you just get your butt kicked by all these different things that they've like taught you along the way. But
well, that was the funny thing going through hard mode, because I had already done all the crazy tough challenges, which are way harder than anything that the actual game will throw at you. So I was like, hard mode, no problem. Super straightforward and easy. I think I died maybe one time in the hard mode, and I died many, many times before I started doing the challenges in the normal mode. So, it
feels good.
It ratchets up.
It like pushes you, and then you like really truly become Batman, which is awesome.
I feel more Batman-like right now. I'm wearing black. My muscles are a little bit bigger, probably. Look at that. I mean,
it's huge.
Don't get any better than that.
Haven't seen bigger ones than that.
I can pull
before,
my hat down over my eyes, and now I can kind of see through them because there's like little holes, and so I'm kind of Batman. I'm kind of like Batman.
And you know who else is kind of like Batman?
Superman.
The
Catwoman is kind of like Batman. She runs around and she wears a thing.
Some of the characters from Horizon Zero Dawn, which is the game that
good segue.
That's the best I can do. So I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn, or the sequel here, and it's pretty damn good so far. I had like I would say the beginning of the game is kind of. It's like a lot of beginnings of games kind of stink for me. Like it just feels like they're throwing a lot at you right away. You have like a ton of tutorials. In this case, like it kind of makes sense because it's a sequel. They're just trying to chuck everything else that you've already learned out there, so that if somebody was to pick this game up, without playing the first one, they could do all these different things, have all these items that you already had, which I really appreciate. They didn't just steal it all from you. After you've played through hours of that other game, you get most of your stuff back. I think within like the first 2 hours or something, I had most of the things that I needed. But
so that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. You've kind of already touched on with Horizon, because I was one of these people who was so eagerly awaiting the release of Breath of the Wild back in 2017. There were a million games that came out that first half of 2017 that you could really sink your teeth into. I'm talking long freaking games.
Oh, yeah.
And Horizon was one of them, so I just never got around to it. How accessible is Forbidden West for those who didn't play the original? Like, would you say that you could pretty much just jump right in? Is there lore involved? Is there stuff that I would be significantly missing if I just went straight to the sequel?
I would say it is definitely you have to play the previous game. And I hate saying that. I actually hate the idea of sequels being like so connected in a way, because it's just like it cuts people off. Like, Kingdom Hearts and that kind of thing. It's like, just play the
That's
new game,
completely
dude.
different.
Forget the story. Just play the new game, and you're never gonna get this. Like some of that stuff. These companies, they just make it really inaccessible. I think you could play this game, and the really cool part about the beginning is they do give you a recap of the previous game right away. As soon as you put the disc in, it's a full story
Last time
recap.
on Horizon.
Exactly, full recap, and then you go into the game, and they even recap a lot of stuff initially in that first couple hours or so, which is really nice. And just in conversations with people, you can kind of guess what was happening. It's good for me because I forget what happened in the game anyway. Like, it's been since 2017 since I played that game. I was playing that game right up until when Breath of the Wild came out. I just finished it and went straight into Breath of the Wild right after that.
You beat Horizon Zero Dawn in like 4 days then,
Yeah,
because that thing,
I did.
Breath of the Wild was right on its tail.
The only thing I hadn't done the DLC, which came out much later, but I literally was like staying up most of the night playing that game. I was so into it. And,
It's hard to believe it's been 5 years since that, pretty much. Like, we're like, by the time people are watching this, in fact, this might be,
Yeah, that's crazy.
depending on when you put this up, the 5th year anniversary of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, it's also the 5th year anniversary of DiskCast. So DiskCast's been going for 5 years now. When we hit
Now, see,
August,
I'm
I
a
think.
good co-host because I totally knew that, and you didn't have to tell me
Absolutely.
or volunteer the information or anything.
I don't think anybody knows that. that's that's just between you and me. Don't tell these people. It's a secret. But
Cut
yeah,
that.
the game,
Cut that out.
like that beginning part, I always struggle at the beginning of games. Like Xenoblade has this kind of very slow beginning all the time, and there's just so much information that they have to give out to people that they have to front load so much of it. So I was just like a little bit taken back at the beginning. They did keep it pretty small. They don't really give you, too much stuff. I'm not going to review the game now or spoil it, but it's very good. Like, after you get past a little of that tutorial stuff, it just opens up and you're back in Horizon Zero Dawn again. There's a lot of quality of life stuff that they've improved in this game, and it just feels really, really good. So I'm really enjoying that right now. And I'm probably I want to say 6 or 7 hours into it or something like that. So there's plenty of game left, and it's definitely big.
It's only been a couple of days. I typically like to give these things a little bit of room to breathe, but it's very early 2022. Would you say Horizon Forbidden West is a early contender for Game of the Year?
I think it's going to be a contender, but it's going to be insane this year.
It's going to be a big year.
I would say that the problem that I see for Horizon Zero Dawn in that situation is that it's a sequel. So that's for me, when you make a sequel to a game, I think it's very challenging to get that hype up that you would have had on the initial. Like Breath of the Wild 2, is it going to be Game of the Year? I don't know. I think you're going to have a lot
It's
of
hard
negativity.
to say. I think, well, it really depends on how much they change and how much that extra development time has really been justified. And the longer it takes, the more I feel like, okay, is this really a sequel to Breath of the Wild? Is it just being postured that way because that's the most recent release? Or is it really going to be like its own game with its own engine, its own system, its own new mechanics? Like, what is that really going to be like? So if we get Zelda this year, I think that will be a question that we will inevitably be able to answer by the end of the year. But really right now, I think you're looking at Pokemon Legends and Horizon as the two big kind of tentpole releases of 2022 that we'll look back on and remember.
Elden Ring, my man.
Elden
Ring.
That's not out yet.
It's
That's not
coming.
out yet, though.
That's
fine.
It better be good. I'm telling you right now, it better be good.
Well, it's a From Software game, so it won't. It'll be full of
they
bugs and
always
glitches.
screw it up, man. They just make terrible video games. Let's be real.
I agree.
Well, we had a little bit of news this week. To start off, we had Nintendo shutting down the Wii U and 3DS eShops. Shae, do you care?
Well, so I mean, we're on the DiskCast podcast, right? So no, because I am a collector of physical goods and physical media, and I believe that the digital revolution has been, as a whole, not super great overall for the medium. It's done some great things. There have been some great digital-only releases for sure, but the fact is, and we're still kind of in the wild west as far as knowing, what's going to become of all those WiiWare games that got taken down. Are they ever going to come back? Will we ever be able to play them again? And you'll probably see the same with some of these Wii U and 3DS games, but I think for the most part, anything that's really worth playing kind of got a physical release anyway. So go pick yourself up a physical copy of Xenoblade Chronicles X, but don't sweat it too much over that copy of Devil's Third that you're never going to get to play.
What about like the Zelda games, the Game Boy Advance games and stuff that they had on that console? Like on Wii U,
what's still available if you go to a local game store and they've got a copy of Minish Cap in the cabinet? Like, is it really expensive? Yeah, it is. But I have it, so like this is a have and have nots problem, right? I am in the group that has, so I don't care. But for everybody else, get some money real quick and go buy all the good games.
Jesus, yeah, man. It's tough, right? Like you have like right now there's like Twitter's a thing I'm pretty plugged into, and so I watch people like argue about this stuff like all the time, and I have a fantastic time with my popcorn watching them do this, and it's like people, you have like a Wii U group of people that I've seen in the retro community who are just like totally is like, I was there, bro, like I had a Wii U, and like that's their claim to fame, and I'm like, they're like, you should have been there to buy those games when those games were out. You should have been there. If you didn't, you missed out. Sorry. And like, there's kids that are like just born who are like, "What, dude? Like, I wasn't even alive when the Wii U was a thing." Like,
don't say that. Don't say that. It's been 10 years. I can't.
That means there's
handle
10-year-olds.
The idea that I used to be younger and playing Wii U games.
I think it's always that like perspective of like looking back and like, I don't know. People seem offended that people didn't buy a Wii U when it's not really their fault that they didn't buy a Wii U. It's all marketing and how much power is behind the Wii U as a like a marketable thing. It's really Nintendo's fault that the Wii U didn't sell. It's all their fault. It has nothing to do with people.
I mean, I was offended at the time that people weren't buying Wii U's because I was like, these games are so good. Splatoon is so good. Mario Kart 8 is so good. Donkey Kong Country, Super Smash Brothers, like that system had some pretty great games in the first couple of years of its life. And people always point to, well, it didn't have games. Well, yes and no. There was severe dry spells for it in the first year, but it really kind of opened up after that for at least a little while. And yeah, you're right. It did come down to marketing. It did come down to, well, am I really bothered that people aren't buying Wii U's because I'm a Nintendo fan? Well, kind of, because if people buy the console, then I'll get more games to play. But
yep,
now it just sort of feels like ancient history,
Yeah, I just want Xenoblade Chronicles X. I want that on Switch. I mean, I'll take any, like, I'm okay with ports. I'm fine with ports. I know a lot of people don't like ports, and they think it takes up the main people at Nintendo's time to make them, and that means they don't get another Mario game soon or something like that. But I don't think that's the same team that makes ports.
No chance. I am not a Nintendo employee, nor is my uncle, but I can guarantee you that they are not spending primary resources on port jobs from old Wii U games. Like that's not a good use of company resources, because all they're doing with those ports is getting people to double dip, which you got to figure is probably less than 50% of the people who bought the original game, and then anyone who's like still kind of interested in basically playing an old game. That's who you're cleaning up with those ports, and that's not going to result in mega sales most of the time, like a new Mario or a new Zelda or even a new Metroid, which the Metroid Dread sold very well. They can make new games and old games at the same time. It's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really think they're just like these small groups that just work on it and like make sure it works for the port, and that's pretty much it. I think that's why we had like Monolith Soft saying like, listen, if we were going to port Xenoblade Chronicles X, like it's next to impossible. That's the last time that they talked about it. Was like it's pretty much impossible, because they would have to be the one.
I never heard that.
That was like, I want to say year 2 of Switch or something like that. And it was literally from Monolith Soft's mouth saying that, sorry guys, it's impossible. I still think it's possible.
I would prefer that they didn't, just because if you tried to play that game without the gamepad, it kind of became a lot less pleasant of an experience.
Yeah.
And people talked a lot about the gamepad never being used properly by a bunch of people who made Wii U games. Like, they just never found that big innovation.
When they did, so good.
It never needed to be a big innovation. It just needed to be a quality of life thing. And Xenoblade Chronicles X, I thought, got that really, really right.
Yeah. And like I guess 3DS is the same way. Like I found a lot of really cool 3DS games that like used that second screen, and you could just like Monster Hunter on that game on 3DS was fantastic, and you could just completely customize it to have like any buttons that you wanted down below, and you could just make it your own thing. And it was super handy. And like maps, even just like that's the simple fact of having a map down there or being able to use it for like fast travel or something like that just changed the way the flow of games were.
A simple thing, but a major increase on the interfaces that were available at that period of time in gaming, where you had to go into a menu anytime you wanted to look at a map. And you know, they still really don't have a great solution for that stuff even now. That second screen, and you know, the 3DS was a big part of this, the original DS, and then, you know, into the 3DS, and then the Wii U. I mean, it was all sort of, Nintendo had a monopoly on that second screen that would just made certain things so much better.
Yeah, I think that the dual screen thing goes back, like, I wonder where the beginning of it. I know with GameCube and like the Game Boy Advance, but before that, I'm not sure where they had another dual screen. But like, man, it's like in the blood of Nintendo at this point.
It's always kind of been a thing to augment the state of gaming in a way that provides a different type of experience. That's like always been kind of the Nintendo thing. I don't know how we got to this topic from shutting down the Wii U and the 3DS eShop. I guess my point is, like, I don't really care enough about them shutting down the shop, but it does mean like literally the end of an era. The Wii U is...
It means it's really getting put away.
1 year from now, March 2023, is when the shop will go down and you won't be able to buy any new games. You will be able to download your old games, of course, but like that's it. The Wii U, the state that it's in on March whatever 2023, that is the state that it will remain for the rest of time. So goodbye, sweet prince.
See you later, Wii U.
Or whatever.
I'm glad we at least got some of your games over on Switch before your ship sunk. But yeah, I mean, like, I look at the situation, like, I understand. Like, I'm not upset about it. It's not a big deal for me because I'm really not playing my Wii U that often anyway right now. I play probably more retro games than I do the Wii U at this moment. And I played the Wii U when it was in its era. And I played a ton of Wii U then. You know, I played all the big heavy hitters plus a bunch of weird side stuff because at the time, that was my main console. I didn't have a PlayStation or an Xbox.
Wow.
I may have had a 360, but I'd never played it. Like, I played 360 years before that more exclusively. And, yeah, the Wii U was like my main horse. I had never had a PlayStation as my main console.
So you were picking up, you know, your Gunman Clives, your SteamWorld Digs. You were picking up,
Dude,
you know,
SteamWorld
Guacamelee when that came out. Shovel Knight was a big deal on Wii U.
Yep.
I remember the Shantae games. You probably got a lot of play. I remember when they released Pushmo World. You know, I can pull out all these old like Wii U gems that were just like little.
A lot of Monster Hunter. Like if I found a game that I could sink a lot of time into, like I would fall in love with it. And Monster Hunter was that for me. And same thing on the 3DS. Like I just checked that we all had this like look back at your history of 3DS and Wii U thing just happened with Nintendo.
I didn't look at mine. I thought I would be really depressed by it.
It's just Netflix. Yeah. I mean, like I was looking at the ones on Twitter, and like a lot of them were just Netflix. I was like, holy crap! Like their main.
I mean, on the Wii U, there was not like Netflix was available. I think from day one on that thing, and in 2012, like you didn't have. You know, if you were a 360 gamer primarily, like you probably weren't picking up your 360 a lot at that point. So it stands to reason that, yeah, like Netflix would be probably one of the most used apps on the Wii U at the time.
We have it on, is it on Switch now? We do have it on Switch now. Is it not?
No, they'll never put it on. Nope. Hulu is.
We have
Crunchyroll is. Twitch is.
Netflix
YouTube is.
That's nuts.
No Netflix.
That's crazy, man.
There was a story back when Reggie Fils-Aimé was still with Nintendo where he's like, yeah, the ball's in Netflix's court at this point, like just waiting for them to get back to us. And then they asked some reporter asked Netflix about it, and they're like, we don't know what they're talking about. Like they haven't even reached out to us.
That's
so
bad.
I think someone at Nintendo forgot to check their outbox when they were on the way out the door one day because that email never got sent.
I'm not surprised. You know, I remember the GameCube coming out and not having a DVD player. You know, so here we are.
Yeah, the GameCube never had Netflix either. So I mean,
true.
you know, it's Nintendo doesn't have a good history with Netflix.
I feel like Nintendo's more focused on like finding some interesting either they're going with a gimmick or they're going with like a new way of playing games, and they're always looking in that direction versus like, oh, how can we make this more of a like a media console for some other thing that people would already be doing, like watching movies or whatever, or searching the web. But
it's always kind of been about games for them. And to be honest, that's like why I've had this great respect for Nintendo for a long time. Like even during those, I call them the dark ages or the dark period from like 2008-ish to about 2017. Like that was kind of a rough time to be a Nintendo fan because if you got a major tentpole release, it was pretty much from Nintendo. And there was then a period in there from like 2010 to 2013 or so where there really weren't any major Nintendo tentpole releases that were really like, yes, this really moves the needle for me. It was like Fire Emblem Awakening. It felt like an awakening. Like, we're coming out of this deep, long reverie where there's been really no great Nintendo game since like Donkey Kong Country Returns, unless you really like Skyward Sword. I'm going to shut up and stop talking.
Listen, I like
crap
Skyward
about
Sword.
my
I'll
favorite
fight you
company
till you're dead. That's a fantastic
All
video
right,
game.
great,
It's the best game
great.
in the world.
For every Skyward Sword, I will raise you a Game & Wario and a Kirby's Epic Yarn.
Oh, I cannot believe you just put those against Zelda. So we're going to move on to the next. Piece of news, which is just kind of silly. We have a Cyberpunk patch came out to fix the game. This finally released after the game was released in December 10th, 2020, and now we're here. They just released the patch to fix this console version of the video game. It is 2022, baby. So,
do we have any details on what quote unquote fixes the game, or is it just kind of a generic, hey, we fixed a ton of bugs that were reported, a year and a half ago? It feels like, man,
apparently
December 2020 feels
we're
like
allowed
so
to have
long
people.
ago.
Like we didn't have people in the streets apparently before, but now we have people in the streets, which is nice. I remember when I initially started playing it when it released, I played it for a few hours. The game just crashed multiple times, like 5 or 6 times in that few hours, and it was very annoying. But also there was this haze, and the entire game just looked like trash and ran terribly. It was like, what is this? You guys campaigned the crap out of this game and you just released this?
I need some context though, just to be clear. What console did you first play Cyberpunk on?
PlayStation 5, I think. Yeah. PlayStation 5.
So you had the PS4 version of the game, but you put it on your PS5 and
Yes.
did that thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And all it is when you play it on PS5, you just put it in and it plays like a regular game, just like it would on a PS4 or PS4 Pro. The only other PS4 I have is a PS4 Pro. I did not go and try it on the PS4 Pro, but from what I understand, PS4 playing it on PS4 was like even worse than what I had experienced, and PS4 Pro was like slightly better, but still terrible. And then PS5 was close to what PS4 Pro was doing. Which is amazing because we are in the next generation, and they had not like captured any of that on right off the bat, and they knew that console was out there.
My eyes are kind of glazing over talking about the performance of a game that came out back in December of 2020, but this is kind of the state of the industry now, right? Where a game can basically just release unfinished with virtually, Cyberpunk is a special case because they got tons of blowback for that. But a lot of games release literally
delayed.
unfinished all the time. And it was because they delayed that they got all the pushback, I think.
Yeah.
They delayed multiple times, and then it's like, okay, this is the date. And look, we don't need to do an autopsy, a postmortem on Cyberpunk because it's already been done to death. But
it's dead.
But
That's for sure.
But that is the state of the industry, right? We were just talking about the Wii U and the 3DS eShops going down. There stands to reason there will be a world one day where someone has a copy of Cyberpunk 2077 on PS4, but the patch can no longer be downloaded.
Yeah, or the rest of the game. I don't think the whole game is on the discs anyway. I think you have to like download a portion of the video game to play it. But I mean, don't quote me on that. But almost every PlayStation game that I've played for the last few years is like feels like it's missing a bit. Like you put it in and it's like no matter what, you have a day one update, which is not the case with most of what like Nintendo does, which is very interesting. Though some of the ones more recently have had day one updates. I've noticed some just don't, and I'm like, wow, that means my game that I'm playing right now is actually on this little tiny cart, which is pretty cool. But it is the state of the industry. It's like, man, can't we just make a game that's like, just like, even if you're going to patch it later, just make it like, make sure it's really good enough to be on that disc. If it's going gold, it should be good enough. Like, that should be the end of the story. Like, it shouldn't be like, oh, there's like stick figures on there, so it's going gold, baby, and we'll figure out the rest later.
We are kind of like staring into the abyss right now too, because we don't know what's out there in terms of the primarily digital future of the industry. Because we can easily say we've transitioned into a point where now not the entire industry, but the majority of the industry is digital, right? Like, that's an easy thing to say.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends on what you're talking about by industry too. We can get even into the weeds with that stuff, talking about like mobile games,
whatever you want to do.
It's the gaming market as a whole.
Podcast.
Like, I love to look at the pie chart of like gaming, just gaming, right? Like video gaming, and be like, oh, how big is console gaming? And just see how tiny little it's just this little baby down there compared to mobile gaming and everything else. And definitely the digital market is like just crushes any physical stuff. That's for sure. But that's the reason why we see all this weird stuff happening in the industry with like companies trying to make extra money out of their stuff. They're like, well, if we're going to make these long, big, awesome games, then we should like put in some loot boxes so we can get a little extra cash. These guys break their backs and make less money than some guy who just puts like a little cell phone game together called Wordle, you know?
When let me ask you this question: when you are as someone who literally has a YouTube channel based around collecting physical objects and displaying them and figuring out like the best ways to do that, when you see that Horizon Forbidden West is getting a special collector's edition that comes with a steelbook but no game, like, how does that make you feel? I'm going to go all therapist on you here for a second and really delve into your emotions and your psyche. What does that do to Mr. Discart?
If I was to, pick up something like that, if I was to grab, say, Horizon Zero Dawn, like, special
it
edition.
works because we're on video. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had a moment where it all clicked with me. I was like, what does he do? Like, all right, like some visual joke. Oh, I get it.
This is
we're
new.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
very amateurish here.
So I guess like in most cases I'm less offended by things nowadays than I used to be. So when it comes to like, I like seeing like where things are going in the industry and being like, how do we fix that? Like, if we're going to an all digital future, then can we maintain some sort of ownership of our digital files somehow? What does it mean if, a company goes down? Can I still download my stuff? Like, how do we solve these problems for like when our kids play games in the future, if it's all digital, if that's what it's going to be? It probably won't be, but if it is, then, how do you do that? But looking at what the current situation is with this special edition, they released the game, or they released the special edition. You have like a giant figure. And this thing's expensive. You have to save up a long time to grab this thing. But you have like Steelbook is in there, has no physical game. And so my first question was like, why are you doing this? And the answer to that question is because it's a cross-gen game. What they could have done, instead of putting a code that's good for PS4 and PS5, they could have just put in 2 discs, I guess.
They would never print 2. No,
or you put in a PS4 disc and then upgrade it with digital again. I mean, that's the only other option you have, is like, you either make it only PS4 or PS5, but why take a limited number of things that you're already making and divide it into like, here's the PS4 special edition and here's the PS5, or you just get rid of PS4 and say like only special editions for PS5. But the code works for both. I think technically I could put it on both my consoles.
Honestly, I think for consumer goodwill, I think maybe the last option you laid out would have been their best option, in terms of just saying best option for both the consumer and the company together. Like the best, like, meet in the middle. Say, okay, the only version that's going to have a physical disc is going to be the PS5 version. Upgrade to PS5, you PS poors.
Exactly. I think, and I mean, they would have got pushback for that too. I mean, they would have had like,
they would have got some, but it would have been financially acceptable. Like, to the amount of pushback they would have gotten would have been outweighed by the amount of additional revenue they probably could have gotten by releasing a physical version. Because when I see
but again, like,
does a PlayStation, if there's no disc, I'm not buying it. Period.
What if your disc doesn't mean anything though? I mean, we're talking PlayStation.
We're already to that point though. The disc doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. So essentially what people are arguing about is something that means nothing. right?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much my
does-
entire existence.
It's like, man, I really want this physical disc. Like, give me that physical disc. But then you like you look at the physical disc, and you're like, oh wait, the game's not on here, dude. This is just like a thing I hold. Like, I could take this in 10 years from now, and if the network's down, this means nothing.
I have a box with Tetris 99 in it. I know it's in there. I haven't opened it, but it's in there.
Well, the disc, yeah, you know that physical disc is in there. I mean, to me, like the cool part about
I don't know. That's a joke because there is nothing in that box. There is a code. There's a code. No, there is a code for 12 free months of Nintendo Online.
Have you seen the boxes of like what are they, like little indie games at Best Buy, and they have like a plushie? It's called like plushie new game plush. That's what it's called, new game plush, and it's like a plushie from the game. And it's a digital code in there.
Marketing is so easy.
And like that's all it is. It's just there's no game. You just get the digital code, and that's it. My plan with this special edition is like, I know for a fact Horizon Zero Dawn is going to be cheap because they're making tons of copies of that game. So I got the code. I put it in my PlayStation 5. It's going to be there. It's handy to have digital games. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I will want the physical, even though I know more than likely that game isn't really on that disc, like at least the one I'm playing right now.
I think mentally it serves two purposes. The first one to basically support our vanity in that we have these big walls full of games and things, and we don't want there to be an end point. We want to keep going and just keep collecting for the rest of time until our entire house is just stacks and stacks of video games everywhere. And then the second purpose is I had it, but it went away because I started thinking about the difference between hoarding and collecting. So
That was it.
I guess that's where that point will end.
That poor point just like sailed. I mean, it's just all that stuff's so
This
interconnected.
podcast
You could
is
break
not going
down.
to last more than 2 episodes. Go ahead.
That's it. Yeah, it's tough though, man. I get what you're saying. It's like I really would like that. Like, why put the steel case in there at all? Like, why is there a steel case in my special edition if you have like a
it
code?
almost feels like you're drawing attention to something that like didn't need attention drawn to
like
it in a weird
some
way. Does that make
dude
sense?
Doesn't know that that's only codes, right? And he's going into that special edition and he's opening up that. I mean, they did a really good job of letting everyone know that it was going to be codes and stuff. Like everywhere in big lettering, it was all over the place that it was going to be codes only. But some guy's opening up that steelbook expecting a disc to be in there.
So if it's not a trick, if it's not a marketing trick, because they make it very evident that there's no code, and it's also, but they also felt the need to put a steelbook in there. That means that they feel as though there is a very, very large untapped market for steelbooks with no game inside.
You know what it is? Somebody went in, like they had all these special editions ready, okay? They were ready to rock. Disc was in the steelbook. But then somebody broke in and took all the discs. They had to come up with something later on to like make up for it, and they just put the codes in there because they couldn't get more discs. That's probably what happened.
Welcome to Conspiracy Cast. Collect what you believe in.
That's right. Collect what you believe.
Jet fuel can't melt steel books.
Do you think Retro Studios is going to release a Metroid soon or something?
I mean, it does certainly seem as though they are gearing up to announce something. I mean, it becomes a meme to, Nintendo Direct. We just had one a couple weeks ago. Nintendo Direct's coming up. That means it's time for Metroid Prime 4,
gosh.
right?
No, dude.
And it's like, dude, this is not, they're not going to announce it at some random thing. Like, it's going to be, they're going to want to have as many eyeballs on it as possible. So, it's going to be around E3 time.
Yeah.
Now, Retro Studios on Twitter, if you are managing the Retro Studios social media account, maybe you want to get a little bit of viral attention.
Yep.
So you upload some official-looking art from something that looks like it could be Metroid Prime 4 as your studio's new banner image on Twitter. And that is the entire story.
And it's just like Kojima went over there and just like changed it. Like he just happened to be in the office that day and he's like, you know what? Let's put this up there. Let's spice things up. You zoom in.
Because Kojima is the only one who does any sort of subversive marketing tactics at this point in the game.
He's the master, like everyone has to.
Well, he was the originator. He was the, he was the granddaddy of subversive advertising.
Yeah. Yep, and Silent Hill's probably coming out next week too, That's
yeah.
That's what
they're
we
releasing the 4 Silent Hill skateboards,
That's right.
And then at the end of the run of the skateboards, they're going to be like, by the way, we're going to create a special new 5th board, and it comes with a game, but there's no disc inside.
No disc, just the code. Yep, the code's written on the board, and that's all you get. It's just a whiteboard with codes written on it. This is falling apart.
Go out, skate, and give it to all your friends. Just slow down long enough for them to write down the code or take a picture of it, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, they have Tony Hawk do a kickflip, and like you have to catch it right then. Whoever gets it first. It's only one game. You know,
Konami doesn't have the rights to Tony Hawk right now.
it's tough, man. I mean, Kojima has nothing to do with Metroid, but he's over there doing stuff. How do you explain that?
I mean, Microsoft is buying everybody, so I suppose it's not outside of the realm of possibility that Microsoft would just buy the rights to Silent Hill just so they could release skateboards and then have Tony Hawk do a marketing campaign with Silent Hill 5 digital codes.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Are you still following? Because I'm like galaxy brain territory right now.
This is where we are right now. We are big brain.
We're 44 minutes into this podcast, our first podcast, and Discard is already regretting doing this with me.
Yeah, this feels just terrible, and also so right. We have next on the list here. I've got Elden Ring written down. I just wanted to say, like, Elden Ring's coming, dude, and it's going to be a very good time for a lot of people, hopefully. And they're kind of breaking their own rules with this new game, and it sounds like they're making some accessibility options in it as well, which is really interesting.
I hadn't heard about that. That makes me infinitely more interested in Elden Ring.
Yeah, there's something to do with certain areas in the game. So it's open world, right? And you're going to get into certain areas and like fight some big monsters that you may not know you're coming up on, right? Like a giant dragon flying down from the sky, and your last campfire or whatever it is in this game may have been like forever away. And one of the biggest problems people have with these games is retreading the same ground or whatever. And apparently there's like areas that if you step into them, if you die there, you just respawn right there. That already is a huge change to the way that these games roll. I also expect kind of some more accessibility options, and maybe a little bit more story after what they did with Sekiro, because Sekiro had like some like very in your face story, which is very unlike From Software. But I'm interested to see how that goes. Maybe it catches some more people because there's a little bit more leniency when it comes to dying in that game. But I do expect them to crush people's souls as well.
I mean, while I'm skeptical that From Software could ever make a game that directly appeals to me, the adult gamer with not a lot of time, who clearly is no longer located in a basement, as you can see behind me, I can't get too excited for one of their products right now, because right now the baseline expectation for me from a From Software game is, oh, it's going to be hard as hell and completely inaccessible to someone who doesn't have hours and hours and hours of time to really sit down and just be one with the game.
Yeah.
And really get invested.
So I would say like the biggest problem that perspectives, there's a lot of people's perspectives of this game that it's hard, of like From Software games. And some of them are kind of like brokenly hard. Some of the early Dark Souls games are like really, really challenging because they weren't quite there yet. But modern From Software games are more like puzzles. Like you have a boss and you'll go up and maybe you'll fight him once and you're like, oh, I can't beat this guy, so let me walk around this area for a little longer. You'll find an item. On the item it says, hey, this guy is weak to fire. Then you like realize, oh wait, I should have been throwing fire at him. In like 2 seconds he's dead. And like there's just a lot of things like that are built into the game that give you like obvious, like, oh, I should have been doing this, and it would just kill him. It's less about skills, less about movement and like dodging. A lot of the game can be that, and you can make the whole game that if you wanted to, and just like, you know, out dodge them and hit them and whatever. But there's so many like ins for people who are not very good at this stuff. That's why I played it, because I'm not great at this kind of game. I sold Dark Souls 3 twice before I picked it up a third time, and saw somebody else play it in this more puzzle fashion, and I was like, wait a second, these are just like complex puzzle games. They're not as much about get good or being fast with you know, the buttons and the sticks.
It's funny because when you describe essentially an action game like a Sekiro, you know, immediately what I think of is Shadow of the Colossus, in the sense that each boss fight was not so much a test of can you perform these highly specific actions really, really fast and really consistently? It was more of a figure out what to do, and sometimes there will be like a timing element to it. But really, you need to find what the boss's weak point is, and then you go after that once you figure that out, and then it becomes fairly trivial.
And
that's what you're describing with the fights being like puzzles?
Exactly. It's like that. I mean, like I can think of.
Dude, you might have just sold me on Elden Ring.
Well, I can.
I don't think From Software had to do anything.
Like I've met at least a few people where I've just I've tried to Sherpa them. So I'll Sherpa them into this like Souls-like world by something like Code Vein or Fallen Order. Like those games are fantastic to get you like the idea, the core of the game. Campfire. Going out, killing stuff to get some sort of money type thing. It could be souls, it could be whatever, and you take that and you transfer that to more permanent changes to your character, like RPG style. And some of that stuff you can keep by just going back and forth between a campfire to like level your character. And then within the game, when it comes to bosses, is where people are usually frustrated, and that's when you have to go the puzzle route and kind of. Sometimes you have to die. So you go in there and you're like, yeah, I know I'm going to die, but like, let's see what this guy does. He swings at you and he changes it up halfway through or something. But now you know that, and that's part of like figuring out the puzzle. But Sekiro was really interesting because I felt like most bosses had like a dramatic weakness to something. And if you had brought that thing, you would be good to go. And a lot of those things are written throughout the world, and they really want you to explore it. Like the lore of From Software games is written on the world. So if you just go around, talk to people, find things, read the descriptions, then you find out like, oh, wait, this thing's way easier than I thought. But the problem is you get people who just like rush in, they go to the first boss, and they start playing it like they're playing like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry or something, and they just get crushed over and over like I was and sold that game calling it a piece of trash. But there's a whole world out there. We should move to questions.
Fortunately for the listener at home, I didn't really have anything interesting to say in response to that.
No, I think you did.
Anyway, so
I think
no, I really didn't.
I
really
did.
Didn't.
Was just like wow,
No. I meant specifically the last piece that you were your last little monologue there, talking about the beauty of From Software games and what makes them so much better than what they appear to be on the surface, which again is underdeveloped crap. You may have opened my eyes a little bit, sir.
Well, I mean, it's actually what I think From Software games is where games is moving. I think that's the future of video games, is contextual.
Future of video games is live service. I don't know if you're aware of this.
It could be. I mean, you could make a From Software game live service game. I mean, you could do that. But
why don't you just like close my garage door, start up my car, and just like deliver, like it just knock me out and just put me in there, because that's what's going to happen to me.
Well, first of all, like all games are good, right? There's so many different kinds of games that are out there, and some of them are in your face, like give you detective mode to find stuff, and that's how people like, in Batman games, that's how you like had your contextual finding of stuff, right? And then you have Breath of the Wild, which is really neat. And it had a lot of contextual, like pushing you in directions, right? It would be like, oh, like you'd have like random hill of rocks or something, and you'd be like, oh, what's that? You pick up a rock, you find a Korok. That's contextual, like leading you to a thing. Same thing with shrines and puzzles and even just the main story of Breath of the Wild. It was all very contextual and trying to get you to point you in different directions without saying like giving you like a loadout of all the things you should be doing. Because if you had that list at the beginning of Breath of the Wild, you might just be like, screw this game, because it's just so much you could do in that game. But From Software games are very much like that, where a lot of it is like it's in the world and you have to find it, and you have to be paying attention to the way things are set up, or maybe the map design is a certain way to get you to go a certain direction or to understand something before you go and do something else. And I think that is like figuring out how to like get that nice flow to a game, I think is the really cool future of games. It's not necessarily the end all be all of all games.
At the same time, that's always going to be the creative challenge for developers, and the really great ones are able to do it well. But I'm not necessarily 100% convinced that it's a skill that can be learned. I think you just need an inherent understanding of what makes a game fun to play, what makes collecting fun in certain situations and feel checklisty in others. I think Batman Arkham Asylum is a great example of a game that gets it right. Why does it get it right? I have theories. We only have 15 more minutes or so, but I don't know that that I could even get to. Even if I started asking myself hypothetical questions, could I really get there by the end of this podcast? Could I get there at the end of several podcasts? Let's find out.
I mean,
I don't think so.
Even I'm playing this. I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and I click one of the buttons in, and it scans the entire area. Right? I mean, like this is like a very Batman thing. Like I think you could find out a game if it was like really good in the future if all those features are in modern games. Like looking at Breath of the Wild and watching all of these Breath of the Wild likes come out, Breath of the Wild was good because it influenced the entire industry to make a whole type of game. And same thing with Batman. I feel like we don't have Spider-Man unless we had Batman. I don't think that
we don't
exists.
have a lot of action adventure games of the 2010s without Batman.
We don't have
100%.
A lot of these like third person games don't have the same features without Batman. And that's what I think that's what makes board games. But man, we bounce all over the place. That's what we do here on the DiskCast. We pop from one thing to the next, and you just never know what to expect.
I have no filter on. Now let's not go down that road. I am a yes and man.
What is a yes and man?
Well, yes and is the typical improviser's trick where if someone suggests something to you, you say yes. And also this. So if you were to say, I'm illustrating it very poorly here, but if you were to make a joke at my expense, I would then have to come back and either A, make a similar joke at your expense, or B, continue to build on the joke that you've already created. Saying yes and is the antithesis of saying no, but. So if you said, hey, Shae, you look really ugly today, and I would just say, no, I don't. Well, that's it. There's nowhere for the conversation to go from there. So that's kind of the simplest way I can explain it.
Yes, and that's a really good, we're going to get into the questions now. We're going to get into the discussion.
Yes, we are. And that was a really good segue to getting there because it's very important that this podcast maintains any level of cohesion.
Yes.
Far beyond what we've already achieved.
I think we definitely, the only cohesion that we're going to have is that we're kind of going to be around the same time. That's what we're going to try to go for. It's like to be the same length.
Okay.
Oh, God. No, we're not doing that. But Discord questions. We actually didn't ask the Discord any questions. Discord doesn't even know that this exists, that this podcast is a thing right now. This is kind of an undercover, Batman type situation.
No one will ever know this exists. We're not advertising it. We're not putting it out there. We're not even releasing it.
We're not even
releasing it.
Yeah.
You're not seeing. Yeah. How did you get access to this?
Burn after watching. Here's the first question comes from Cat Jam. We're just pulling from questions that we regularly ask in the Discord, which is completely open. There'll be a link in the description to that. But what was your favorite pickup of the year? That comes from Cat Jam.
Do you want me to go first here? Because I actually have my favorite. I was prepared.
Yes,
we talked about this, but I'm prepared.
And I would like you to go first. This is trash.
All right, this is one of the dumbest things I think that I've ever purchased. This is up there with my Japanese Metal Slime Vita, which I bought last year early on. This little beauty was bought from a game store in De Pere, Wisconsin. This is the Resident Evil 4 chainsaw controller, and I'm trying to give a good look at it on the camera on my computer, but I can't really see what I'm showing you, so hopefully it's a good look at it. It's a chainsaw-shaped controller meant for use with Resident Evil 4 on the PlayStation 2, and it comes in this crazy display case. So
now did they make these for the GameCube as well?
They did. They did not have the GameCube version of the controller, and I probably would have preferred that version because I actually don't own Resident Evil 4 on PS2, so now I got to pick it up. But yes, there is a GameCube version of this controller out there.
It comes with that whole box around it, like that's part of it. Like as that glass case.
That's actually that is the box that they released it in. So it's unclear looking at it whether or not this controller has actually ever been played with.
Oh.
And looking at it, you'd probably be like, well, how would you do it anyway? Well, there's two little prongs on the side. You can if I'm using this hand, this is the hand that's holding the chainsaw handle, and then there's another little piece that kind of juts out from the side, and then you have the buttons in the middle. So
if this is like
I hope you're watching the video.
Well, I mean, you did pretty good of describing what it was, though. Let's say this is like a Toy Story timeline. That controller could be just really sad all the time because nobody's ever played with it, right? It's
I
just,
mean, I would assume that it's really sad because things that never should have been created as toys are probably pretty sad. They're like, oh God, I'm an abomination.
yeah, it's like a murder implement that has been put into a box for a console that is, is gone at this point. It's probably a pretty, it's a sad controller. It's probably happy to be in your home now, and be free.
Oh, it's happy to be in my home. It's hanging out with the Metal Slime Vita. It's hanging out with the Donkey Kong Jungle Beat bongos in my display case.
Oh, yeah.
The Ring Con is in there. A bunch of random peripheral nonsense for sure. So it's in the right place now for sure.
Yep. I mean, until the Switch one comes out, this year when they make
Until
the remake or whatever, right? Remakes.
Until I pick up a complete in-box edition of Steel Battalion, and those
Oh
accessories
my
take over my
gosh,
entire
dude.
living room, and then everything has to go down to the basement. So we'll see.
We had a game room tours with one of those that appeared, and it was just on. That's just so big, dude. It took up like
It's
its
so
entire
much.
desk dedicated to this thing, but it's pretty dang cool. Like to think,
I mean, if you're that big of a Steel Battalion fan, I mean, you gotta be that dedicated.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you have to. Your whole room could be just a big shrine to Steel Battalion.
it's like those flight simulator guys, like you see them and like they have like tons of stuff like everywhere and like controllers for flying the plane and ailerons and it's crazy. You just have a chainsaw.
But not you. You didn't want to take your work home with you, so you didn't get into all the flight sim stuff.
Exactly.
What is your favorite pickup of the year?
Okay.
Is that it right there?
Okay. Yeah. So far, it's this guy right here.
Oh my God, that thing
And
is.
this
a
is we were
titan.
talking about it earlier. This is from the Horizon Zero Dawn Special Edition here, and it's gigantic. I have the originally when they had a special edition for Horizon Zero Dawn, I think it was just Aloy. Last time it was just like a full
Yeah.
figure of Aloy. I didn't get it because I didn't trust their figures to be very good at all. But after that, after playing it and really loving it, they came out with a giant version of the Thunderjaw, which is like the giant robot T-Rex from the first game. And I loved it. I got it on sale, dude. Nobody was buying that thing, so I got a good deal. And it's like it looks like it's hand painted, and there's like so many details under everything, and it's gigantic. It's like worth every penny. So I was like, I'm not gonna miss this guy. And really, I have bought a lot less useless crap in the last couple of years because of changes to my collecting habits. And I was like, well, I know I'm going to like this game, and I know I like that figure, so let's go. So that right now, that's it. The only other thing that could be on the docket this year for like that kind of pickup would be,
Something you find at a convention or something, I
Yeah.
would imagine. I mean, there's always like all kinds of crazy stuff out there for people like us who like collecting, or a chainsaw controller or this larger than life figure of something from some random game.
Yeah, giant
I mean,
robot
there's
elephant.
so much out there.
That's what.
Yeah.
Like fun stuff like that, and I guess the experience of opening that special edition too was just insane. It was just insane. If people do come and check out the Discord, you can check it out in the pickup section. But I did like a whole picture after picture of opening up the special edition, and there's like drawers in it. I mean, this thing was just out of control. Just the opening
It's like an
process felt
unboxing,
so good.
but still pictures.
Yeah, it was.
It's almost as good as an unboxing, which is very big. Unboxing and watching people play games is so big right now, dude. I'm old school. I prefer to open things and look at pictures and
play your own games.
myself.
You play your own games.
Yeah.
That's for
Dude, I play
babies.
my own games. Well,
It's like Back to the Future where they're like, oh, you use your hands? Ugh, that's for babies, dude.
it's like a baby's toy.
That's right.
They
But, yeah.
they were predicting Kinect way in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, we've come we're coming towards the end, but we have one last question. I have Doofus written down as the person who asked this question. It says, how do you feel about esports? Do you know who asked this question, by the way? I didn't write it down.
Some doofus.
I'm sorry, Shae. I'm sorry. But how do
why
you
are you
feel about
sorry?
esports is quite the question there that you're asking. See, where were you at?
What,
on
wait,
time-wise?
pause.
Okay, pause.
Maybe cut this. Did I actually ask this
Yeah,
question?
this is you, dude. This is your question.
Oh, all right. All right. No, keep it in. But I just want everyone to know that that I really care about what you think about esports. No, I asked this question so that I could put my opinion on esports in the chat, unsolicited, basically. I don't like esports. I don't even particularly consider them a sport. So if you've made it an hour into this and you're like, why am I not feeling angry yet? Why am I watching
Time
these guys if
is
I'm
now.
not getting angry at them? Yes, please get angry. I think esports is.
I'm just getting so angry right now. It's just so.
I think it's BS. I think it's not interesting to watch people play video games competitively. I think if you are a competitive person yourself and you yourself want to learn tips and tricks from the masters, I think it can be useful. But I do not look at it as a form of entertainment in the same way that I look at an actual, let's say an actual athletic competition entertainment.
Do you think esports has to be something that people watch? What do you think about the actual sports side?
I don't understand. I don't understand the question.
So my question would be, we have kids who they play soccer, right? But they're not on TV. No one's watching it. It's not necessarily entertaining for people. It's probably entertaining for parents to watch their kids play soccer and stuff. But there's lots of people who play video games against each other and have tournaments that aren't even politicized or put up on Twitch or anything like that. So I mean, is that bad? Or is it
bad to play multiplayer games with your friends? No.
Right. I mean, like in a competitive environment. I mean, esports is just or video games.
The esports. Here's the thing: the esports part of it is the advertising and is the putting it out there for everyone to see, and is the creation of internet personalities who don't even go by their real names and just have weird nicknames in the middle of their real names because that's how everyone knows them. There's just something about it that just feels very artificial and marketing driven and just really turns me off. Whatever happened to the love of the game, man? Whatever happened to unpaid professionals who were just living in their basement trying to master Overwatch? They don't exist anymore. Everyone's getting paid.
That's true. I mean, definitely not everyone's getting paid, though. I mean,
No.
I would say it's challenging. It's challenging for me. I think I like esports. I think I like it because I think it lifts up the entire industry. I think it makes video games more important to everyone, including giant corporations that want to suck everyone's money out of their pockets. But overall, I would rather watch somebody play video games than I would the Super Bowl. I would absolutely...
That's where we would diverge because I much prefer watching people do things that I could never in my wildest dreams ever do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one thing to watch. But let's say I'm on YouTube, right? So, one video I click is, some guy jumping off a cliff, cliff diving, doing something crazy. And I'm like, that's awesome. And the next video is, how to build a bucket. Or the next videos after that is, a comedian. I mean, there's so many different, avenues of that it's hard to say, one thing or the other. But I would say, when it comes to, watching football, to me, it's just some guys throwing a football around. I mean, that's kind of what it is.
That's what it is, right? It is what you make of it, and that's why.
And it's not even that exciting to me. People aren't getting it. I want to see some injuries, dude. I want to see some crazy stuff. You could watch some Australian sports. That. There's where it is, dude. You watch Australian sports. That's where the really real entertainment is. But I don't know. I'd rather watch teams of experts who are absolutely doing stuff that you cannot do, Shae. Absolutely doing stuff you cannot do.
Find a match online with friends to play a game. I certainly can't coordinate that.
Well, I mean,
even coordinating a team is not something that I am capable of doing. I will admit that.
Well, yeah, that. But just really high level, super expertise gameplay. That kind of thing. It's you catch somebody playing Dark Souls with foot pedals or something, or just totally changing things up. It's always very interesting to see these people who are hyper good at stuff play it. Especially
it's interesting, but I also feel and maybe this is me speaking out of turn, and maybe this is going to make me a lot of enemies on our first ever episode.
Oh, you're getting enemies.
But what I think when I think of people who take the time to get absurdly good at something is I think, wow, I mean, that's cool, but they're really missing out on quite the grand experience of life and all the variety that's out there. And by locking yourself into this one ecosystem of this one competitive video game, just at the chance of making money from some big corporation who is sucking the life and soul out of the industry. And there's just something inherently about it that I just don't
Do you
enjoy.
think that they all are like that? You think they're all just doing it for money?
I can't. That is an unanswerable question. That is an unanswerable question.
I think it's a lot of people who are some of them just play it because they like playing the game. Some people are like after like images and doing stuff. I mean, after you had people like Ninja, for instance, play Fortnite and then get picked up by Mixer and make millions of dollars, it kind of signaled to a lot of people that it became a legitimate legitimate idea to go after that kind of an angle. And since then we've had multiple of the same kinds of purchases of these people who that make millions of dollars just playing video games, which I think is awesome. I think it's awesome for people to make money playing the hobby that I really enjoy. I mean, the only bad things that come out of that are changes within the industry that we don't like. I mean, and that can happen. I mean, I can't think of an example of what one of those would be, though.
Yeah, I mean, and really the last probably 6 minutes or so has probably just been full of me putting my foot in my own mouth and not really being able to provide any examples of why I don't like something that can't be fairly easily countered by any logical person who says, well, no, but this is why that's actually good. I mean, ultimately what it comes down to, and what you have to remember when I go after esports, because I will inevitably go after esports again, is it really is just a taste thing. And if you want to compare it to sports, well, you have to be able to tolerate the guy who's like, man, I just can't watch baseball. It's boring to me.
That's what I was saying about football, right?
Yeah, and inherently, there's some really great stuff about baseball that I personally love that just doesn't really do it for somebody else. And for me, with esports, that's just, it is what it is. I would prefer to play my own games. I prefer to not play competitive games. And I prefer to get a wide variety of types of games that I like to enjoy.
Right.
And esports literally takes all of that and says, that's not the legitimate part of the medium that we are going after.
Yeah, I mean, it's like fighting, the fighting game community. Like a lot of those people will just play fighting games all the time because they just love learning the combos and getting really good against another character. I mean, or another player. I mean, in a way, just picking one game could be the most variety that you could get from video games. Like I could play Zelda, Metroid, Horizon Zero Dawn, Elden Ring, all this stuff, and they could feel the same way about their game as I do about playing all of those games that I have tons of variety in because they're playing against human players a lot of the times. But I've never looked at esports like it's something that has to be televised. I just see it as sports. It's like, video game sports. We have Smash tournaments that happen. People just go out and have these LAN tournaments of different things. And people make teams within those realms. It's not always a streaming thing, but it is coming more and more common that it's going to be streamed because why not, right? If you're putting all your time into something like this. But yeah, I think like when you put all your time into something, you do have to kind of relate it to sports in the same way. Some guy spends his entire life trying to become a expert football, player. And that's just as silly kind of as the guy doing games for a living. It's like both are very risky situations, but one might come with college.
In short, you kids at home who are watching this still, don't ever try anything and don't ever do anything because it's just going to result in disappointment. Was it Homer Simpson who said trying is the first step towards failure?
That's right.
That's true.
That's so
true.
bad.
We tried to do a podcast 70 minutes later. Oh God, it has not gone well.
I feel like we might have to like break down esports at some point and make an entire podcast on that industry, starting from like the streaming side.
No, it's going to turn into a therapy session for me where you're asking me, so why did you hate your father growing up? Like, why does your father make you hate esports?
Yeah, like why do you hate? Like I really do enjoy watching streamers, but I like I'll jump on to streams maybe 1 day or 2 days a week and check in on like friends who are streaming. Definitely Fridays I jump on there and kind of go around, see what everyone's doing. And I find it really entertaining to just kind of just hang out in those chats because there's like Twitch has its own vibe, its own culture, and nothing on YouTube is like Twitch. Nothing is like it's this crazy like it's just a crazy chamber of wackos, which I just love. I'm in love with that.
It's like Arkham Asylum. Sometimes you get the Batarang, sometimes you get the lunatic.
That's right. But I think that was our last question. Did you have anything else you want to say on esports? Anything else?
No, I have embarrassed myself enough.
I don't think so, though. This is what I like. This is why I like having you on the podcast, because like you'll come up with something and you'll say your thing, and like we'll have a conversation, and there's no like fighting or anything. We're just like thinking about stuff. I feel like more
when
podcasts
you said
would be
that you
like
were going to play devil's advocate, I mean, you really went hard on the devil's advocate thing for esports, because I know you just find them repulsive and you hate everybody who plays them.
I love esports. I love it. I've played some games, man, that were competitive before. I don't think, like, in fact, like variety, like you talk about variety, right? Like you have variety, but you're missing that thing, right? So do you really have variety if you're missing that other part of gaming?
Whoa, dude! It's like if you take the chip and you just put it in your mouth vertically instead of horizontally, it changes the whole experience.
Like how
it's like a revolutionary mouthfeel, dude. Like,
right?
You gotta try it.
It's like
just try it. Just try it. Just take this. It's a 3D Dorito.
I'm not taking your 3D. Did you see the Super Bowl commercial for the? See, I see the commercials for the Super Bowl, but I didn't watch the Super Bowl. There's a good Doritos commercial.
I have a really bad habit. I have a good habit of muting all commercial.
Oh,
like when I'm watching TV, like I'll mute the commercials. But if you're watching the Super Bowl with other people, like you have the remote, you go to mute because it's just your force of habit. And some people are like, oh, I was watching those commercials. It's like the only instance in human history where it's like, I want to see the ads. I need to see the ads. And, actually this year's ads I thought were pretty good. But historically, I feel like they've been really bad lately. So
it's true.
Anyway.
A lot of those were bad and were for crypto. That's what the ads were.
There were so many crypto ads. Society is really peaking right now, man. I'll tell you that.
Dude, we are
NFTs, crypto.
We are so bad as a society that we're chomping at the bit to watch ads, like feed me ads. And those ads are about crypto. Like that's where we are, dude. And like in the future, it'll be like, give me like crypto games as a service as an ad, and I just want to eat that ad. That's what the future of people is. So sad. You
can't even play the game. You trade the games back and forth, but they're not real games and they're not actually worth anything. But because you say they're worth something, you're trading actual games for fake crypto games.
Man, I want to go into so many tangents on some of this stuff. It's absolutely insane. They talking about like accessibility. I want to talk about accessibility in the future. I want to talk about what that means, like whether it's okay to just want to play a game for the story. Because like some of the stuff you were saying, I was like, what about these people who just want to like not play a game and they just want to walk through the game essentially, and they want to turn it all the way down to so they don't really have to do anything in the entire game, and to a point where they're essentially just watching the game. But
so can we talk a little bit before we go about what your vision is for the DiskCast, and what we really should have done this at the beginning of the show.
Probably.
But if anyone is still listening, like they are probably our future audience anyway. But so what made you want to do the DiskCast? What made you want to get away from the Discart content? Are you done making Discart videos?
Yes.
Say it ain't so.
Yes, it's over. No more displaying. No, I just wanted to like, I made a second channel a while back, and the reason I did that was just because I stay very plugged into what's happening in video games. I'm always paying attention to that. I'm always talking to people about what's happening. I try to be as like evenly keeled when it comes to most things gaming, both retro and modern. I'm just plugged into this stuff, and I don't really have like an outlet for that because I've designed a channel around displaying games, not talking about them. And if I was to make videos on that channel about doing that, I would lose half the work that I've done. So making a second channel so I can pretty much do whatever I want was very important. And this podcast is part of that evolution of the second channel. And I honestly don't like, it's like, I'm just going to be kind of more hands off with this channel and make stuff that I enjoy making. And the other channel is like, I am more focused on like trying to make it like as good as I can. So just expect, total trash to be on this channel. That's what I'm saying. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm right here. Why do you have to say that right to my face? Just because I'm using a $10 Rock Band USB microphone and it sounds almost as good as yours doesn't mean that there's no effort going into this channel whatsoever. Come on.
Oh, wait. Did I have you on mute this entire podcast? Oh, wow. Were you speaking the whole time? Couldn't believe it.
For the entire podcast, I mean, you were just having an unbelievable conversation with just yourself, and then that is what it's like to be inside Discard's head.
That's right. But, I mean, the idea is like to just, have a podcast where we can talk about things that are happening. I see lots of stuff on like Twitter. There'll be like one thing that people are talking about, whether it's games as a service or NFTs in video games or something. And I'm like, man, I'd really love like a place that's not Twitter to talk about these things, and to give people a more even keel of these conversations. Because a lot of podcasters that I know are just kind of like, they're against having anything outside of their own ideas. And I feel like instead of doing that, you look at all the sides of something. Because more than likely, if people are arguing about something, if there's some sort of battle going on, there are two legitimate sides to something then. If it's polarizing, there's usually like a reason that it's polarized. It's not just, it's not a just cut and dry black and white situation like a lot of us want. And we all tribalize into our little groups and fight over PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo or whatever. It's like a lot of this stuff is really interesting. It's really interesting to see why people are upset about stuff and then kind of dig into it and be like, why are these people cool with it? And why are these people not cool with it? And they both think they're right. Like, why is that happening? But I see a lot of podcasts and they're just kind of, they go one direction and they only accept one answer. And it's like, man, like talk about that other side. NFTs. I'm willing to talk about NFTs without just being like, NFTs stink. I myself will probably never buy an NFT in my entire life, but I would love to explore talking about it. It's like, don't shut down stuff before the information comes out and you have like an actual conversation.
Before you have a full understanding of something, you owe it to yourself as a human being to learn as much about it as you possibly can and form a real, actual opinion. And, I do talk out of my butt a lot of the time, so to speak. But I really do enjoy a good thought-provoking conversation, and you certainly can't really get that on Twitter too often. I think the podcast format is an important format for disseminating information, and for some reason I'm on camera, which I never thought was a good idea. But I am glad to be here with you because there's almost literally nobody I think that's better at looking at two sides of an argument than you, sir. So.
I enjoy that.
Think this is going to be fun.
But I think like what you said, you're talking out of your butt, right? Like we all talk out of our butt all the time. Like everyone does. And
I mean, like 90% of the time, everything is coming out of my butt.
It's just like not solidifying your end, I think, is like the key. It's just being like, you talk out of your butt, but like you're open. You're open to
my butt is open.
Oh God.
Okay. I don't know where you're going with this metaphor.
Okay, well, I'm saying like, if you're going to talk out of your butt and you're going to have conversations about stuff, you got to leave like your door open to like new ideas and like understanding what other people are saying, not your, butt door. Okay, here we are.
We need to get away from the butt, the butt just the buttness of this entire.
But yeah, like I think people are so like they just get stuck in their way and they don't really want to have a conversation. They just want to tell you the way it is, right? And I feel like it's way better to have a conversation because like, at the end of the day, I would like to learn more about video games. I want to get better at understanding where this is all going. I want to know what my kid's going to be playing when he's my age. I want to know what that world's like. I want to know what I could do to make that world a better place. So like digging down into stuff instead of being like, the world is over. There's no more physical media and everything is screwed and the world is burning. And, like, let's talk more about stuff and try to figure out what that is. Cause people my age are the ones changing the industry right now. But yeah, this has been the podcast. This is it. And
that's it, baby. If you didn't like it, then don't listen anymore.
Yeah, you can hit the dislike button.
We're not getting.
You can do that.
Don't do that.
I mean, it's there.
Well, I guess a reaction is better than no reaction, right? That's how the algorithm works.
And we never see it too. I never look at those things. I'll never see
dislike
it.
away then. Go for it.
I mean, if we see that there's no likes, then we know. Also, nobody watched too. Then we know. I'm sorry, everybody, for this podcast. We don't have a sign off. Does anybody have an idea for a good sign off? Maybe that's.
Do we
the
need
question.
a sign off for a podcast, or does it kind of just end? Like, because so my other podcast is called Bombers, and actually that this is my other podcast. Sorry, but right now, Bombers doesn't have a sign off. It just kind of ends.
It just goes and